that it's got a decent matchup versus OTK Demon Hunter, decent matchup versus Handlock. You just have to be patient with how you build the boards. Don't vomit it all out at once. Try to give yourself many layers of threats. How it pans out versus Paladin, I'd wager is perhaps somewhat similar, because Paladin also has a lot or access to these sweeping board removals like Libram of Justice to go along with City Tax, or perhaps Lord Barov or Blademaster Samuro.
Yeah, it's going to be a really close one, isn't it? Because Paladin is one of those decks that really struggles with reactivity in terms of its game plan. It doesn't have the ability to kill off these key minions like the Oracle of Alun, the Watchpost, the Peasant, and so it needs to get on board ahead of the Druid. And if you are going to do so, this is the kind of hand that you need. Double Knight, Aldor, plus now a Skulker as well. This is insane.
The 3 cards you just mentioned are the 3 that Alan got after the mulligan. He kept already Barov and Libram, Aldor Attendant, which means that he was already happy with those cards, and to end up with all the other lower end portion of his deck is amazing. The one thing he's missing right now is an immediate answer for the Squirrel. I guess he doesn't have to. I'd be fine just challenging this with an Aldor Attendant, potentially even coining out a Knight of Anointment, and then following up with the 2-drop. But I'm kind of interested in saving the coin for when he needs to go for a big AoE. A lot of the mana can be very tight because the board clears are very expensive.
Yeah, I agree. I'm okay with Alutemu. I'm okay with holding on to the coin here. You do need to have, again, as I said, some amount of reactivity. Even with a hand like this, you know, you do have to remember, Alan, as good as this is for the Paladin, he's playing 1 mana 1/1s and 2 mana 2/2s. Like, it's reasonable to keep up, but there's still a good chance that you'll fall behind. And so saving the coin for Barov City Tax, maybe a Libram of Justice that comes on later on, makes sense too.
Shout out to Alutemu, not ending his turn until their spectator came back with the Pack Mule bug. I mean, I don't know how he timed that so perfectly, but there you have it. We didn't really miss any action except the Squirrel going face, which has put Alan under a little bit of pressure now. Not very much, though, because he has picked up one of the best 3-drops to play on curve here, the Goody 2 shields, even though there are certain small minions available to Alutemu to get rid of the shield. He actually has to expend hero power if he wants to get rid of the shield, because the Guardian Augmentation doesn't quite work the way you want it here.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay though, right? We could look at Hero Power plus Squirrel to take out the Goody 2 shields, and then Mule plus Orc Merchant to take out the Attendant. Seems fairly clean to me.
Yeah, I like that. Gets rid of all the threats, thus eliminating Libram of Wisdom and Hand of Adal as being immediate punishes here. And he sets up for Park Panther on turn 4 to remove whatever else Alan develops unless it has stealth. So the SI7 Skulker as the one-of tech inclusion for Alan here, pretty clutch. Just that having stealth on it is pretty useful for Paladin because they always want to play their buff spells. And the fact that it smooths out the curve potentially from Alan is huge because Paladin is so rigid with its expensive cards.
It's really interesting the order that he played it in there, saying I would rather have a holy spell that costs 1 less than a random card in my deck that costs 1 less, which I think is probably true, like being able to cheat out a Libram of Wisdom, Libram of Hope, sorry, even with the Aldor Truthseeker, I think makes sense. And just being able to get a 0 mana Libram of Wisdom, as I was saying, would also be pretty clutch here.
Yeah, I'd agree. Libram of Justice as well is a big one to discount. Any AoE effect Alan will need. City Tax to go along with the Barov would be huge. Picks up Hand of Adal, which is still playable even with the Watchpost aura, but that Watchpost is going to continue to be a pain for Alan here. Does have double Truthseeker though, and the curve works out pretty nicely, but can he just rely on a curve, or will Alutemu get too far ahead here? The Park Panther's looking pretty clean.
I think what it really comes down here for Alutemu is whether or not he has the ability to capitalize on having a wide board, because Alan is not clearing this, it looks like, for a few turns. He's just going to go big taunt, big taunt, big taunt, and hope that that is enough, which very often it is against Druid. And so for Alutemu, I am looking for Arbor Up, obviously. Composting could be very good as well. Maybe some kind of a combo with Oracle of Alun if he can get that in the next few turns, because as this currently stands, I'm thinking this just falls to the power of the massive minions from Alan.
Yep, I would agree. And I love that Alutemu here is prioritizing Divine Shield on his minion rather than pinging off the 4-1 and pushing an extra 3 to face. When you don't have access to some insurance for your board in terms of card draw, I think the best thing that you can do as aggro druid is make yourself as durable to AoE as possible. So having that Divine Shield there makes the Libram of Justice a little bit... Oh, wow. That composting off the top is enormous. You can put it on a full board, immediately draw tons of minions or tons of cards, or sack nothing because he has Park Panther Divine Shield plus that effect to just solo the Aldor Truthseeker.
Yeah, I love it. It's good no matter what happens. If Alan clears the board, not great, but you draw 7 cards. If Alan doesn't clear the board and plays a minion, you just sack exactly enough minions to refill your hand. The perfect top deck for Alutemu. Alan gets himself not a bad one. It's obviously a turn away from being playable with the Lord Barov, but still a premium top deck for next turn.
Yeah, City Tax is big, although the way this board is shaped, who knows if Alan even needs Barov. He could just go City Tax and clear a bunch of things, but that is an insane top deck. Alutemu just going to trade 2 minions first to make room for the additional treants he gets, or you can say that you value the immediate attack a bit more. I like trading 1 minion first because the Divine Shield doesn't change any breakpoints. You're always going to trade 1 minion into that. But now, if he can retain the other Guardian Aug Merchant, he can just trade 2 minions in instead of 3.
Or Panther plus hero power, right? Sorry, Panther plus the swing hero power would be overkill either way, but gets a little bit more complicated. You could trade in the 2-1 first, I guess, and then finish it off. It's kind of close.
Yeah, if you trade in the 2-1 first, what that allows you to do is like go for Neophyte, and yeah, I don't think the breakpoints are very nice because nothing goes up to 7 attack, right? It was a 9-9.
Yeah.
So I kind of prefer this order, and he gets to preserve as much health on his Panther as possible.
So in terms of reactive plays, I don't really think there's any breakpoints that are relevant, right? They're either clearing the entire board or none of it, because it's all, this Barrow of Libra of Justice plays that set everything to 1 health anyway. So you just want to send as much face as possible, really.
Yep. I guess there's a small argument for Samuro in terms of breakpoints, but it's so difficult to specify what that breakpoint is after not having seen what was made more expensive for Alan. So I do favor just sending maximum damage one way or another. So for Alan here, this is huge. He gets to clear everything and heal for 7 because of City Tax, but Alutemu gets to draw a ton of cards, and we're essentially putting together Wave 2, which might include the Oracle of Elune.
Oh, it's close, but this hand just needs a little bit something extra. Okay.
Not quite. So the Barov by itself sticking on board is annoying. That Death Rattle can mess with quite a few of Alutemu's minions, and because there's no other minion to rush into, he can't use the Park Panther's additional effect to kill the Barov. If he wants to kill it, the Panther itself must die.
Yeah, I think that's okay. You can just go Park Panther, Battle Guard, Bone Chewer Brawler, Peasant Marsul. Just put as much stats on the board and set up for Arbor up to finish off the game next turn.
Yeah, I like it, especially having seen that many cards expended from Alan. Alutemu should also know that all but 1 card in hand were made more expensive by the Far Watch Post as well. And so it's just tough to put Alan on having another specific 2-card combination to deal with everything. But it looks like he's potentially leaving up the Barov.
This is the other line, right? You can say, okay, this 2-attack minion does not die if you trade your Barov in, so you can't get the Death Rattle this turn, unless you want to, I suppose, buff up my minion and then attack in that way, which sounds, maybe possible, but a little bit sus. And then Park Panther's still on board to attack face for effectively 7 next turn.
Pretty smart. Alan doesn't really have any effects to damage his own minion. He does have Broomstick, but the Barov can only attack once, even if it's given Rush here. And so are we coming down to another wall of taunts? Alan has access to Truthseeker and Devout Pupil. That is a lot of defense available.
I think so. You can't fit in the hand of a Dal to go Devout Pupil as well. Like, you could try and rely on going like Bannerman first and just play the Pupil, but the way I see it, you just want to go absolute maximum here. with all the taunts you can.
And then he kills a 2-3, and then Alutemu has Arbor up. Is that lethal? I'm inclined to say no with that much tauntage and it having divide. Oh! He can buff the Vulture Brawler
he's doing
and trade
it.
Yeah! Very cool.
That kills. Pretty sick.
Kills Peasant and Marsul.
Okay.
Ariel, so he can kill the Panther as well. Alan's pulling it back.
Oh, and he can play the Devout Pupil as well because of the 0 mana Wisdom. That was an absurd draw off of the hand of Adal. Unbelievably strong turn. And all of a sudden, what was looking like a potentially winning spot for Alutemu has just turned around. He's going to need a lot of nuts.
Yeah, he's got 2.
Okay, okay.
Full board again. Cariel's good, but she can't take down everything by herself. Devout Pupil, Cariel. Oh man, Alan is a Samuro away from victory here. Oh my god, Bannerman Samuro, 2 points AoE. That's gotta be the game. Not everything dies immediately to Samuro by itself, but I think enough dies that Alan can seal the game.
I think you're right. You can take out the Divine Shield first or after. It doesn't make a difference, I guess.
Yeah, and then Cariel trades into one more thing. She dies, but it's annoying. Yeah, the annoying thing is that the Cariel cannot die to the Annoyatron, so you can't put the Wisdom of Wisdom on the Samuro immediately, but I think that's okay. What will be left for Alan after this for Alutemu after this board state is like 2-4-1 Treants, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a 4-1 Battle Guard as well, but Alan will have a 2-2, a Taunt, and the remainder of the Samuro. I think that is fine, especially after he's seen double Arbor up. Oh man, Derek, I'm still hung up on the Adal your opponent's minion.
Yeah, such a sick play. No reaction whatsoever from Alutemu, though. He is stoic as ever, as, you know, he's still not out of it here. He's pushing 8 damage on this turn. He's played both Arbor ups, obviously, but another composting here. Teacher's Pet, Greybow. Not so much Annoyatron, but there were cards that kept him in the game. It's still not technically over.
Not yet. We were in a similar situation when Alutemu faced Handlock yesterday and we called it over, but he found the lines to stay in it. I don't think he had any top deck outs for immediate lethal with double Arbor up and double Park Panther already used. But maybe if Alan gets the worst draw in his deck next turn and Alutemu gets... man, I don't even know if an individual draw is good enough here. Like, composting might be too slow. Alutemu himself is only on 15.
I wonder if that was the right play from Alan. How much health was his Devout Pupil before he put the Libram of Wisdom on it? Because if he'd put it on the 1-1, nothing could be hero powered instead.
True.
Don't know, kind of close. But this way it does mean that nothing can get through the Annoyatron, or past the Annoyatron, I guess, as it's killed off. And then still 2 4-attack minions in play. It's not necessarily enough to win the game, but it's something to give Alutemu hope for one last turn.
But he doesn't play any Librams of Hope in his deck. He needs something amazing. That is not it. Can he survive on board? He gets rid of a 2-1, goes down to 14. There will be 8 damage left on board, plus 2 Librams of Wisdom. I think he stays alive.
So Deck Tracker has broken, unfortunately, because of the Mule Bug, but I'm pretty sure he's played both Park Panthers as well, right? Which means that that is gone as an out off the top. He could go for like attack, hero power, face, and then hope to get there that way. Both Arbor Up's gone as well. He's not playing the Nature Studies like Alan is.
I think there's literally 0 outs. Any individual draw from Alutemu here will not be good enough, and the Peasant never lives to draw a card if he plays it here.
Oh, if he gets Teacher's Pet into Stealth 4-2, the other Panther, Jungle Panther, is that even still in the game? I think it is.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I'm coming up with anything I can.
Fair enough. That's better than anything I could think of. Alan might just get lethal here for himself. Oh, yeah, I think he did.
I think that'll do it. Yeah.
Lady Liadrin gonna respawn all of these Librams of Wisdom and a Hand of a Dog.
Oh, yeah.
Enough mana to play all of it. That was a nail biter. Alutemu got really close, but not far enough. Game 1 to Alan.
Oh, such a big win. Not only in terms of obviously getting a point on the board, but also getting the win with the Paladin, the deck that has struggled so heavily every single series in Grandmasters. Getting it over the finish line right out of the gate means that there's only the Druid and the Hunter left over for Alan. Could still be a bit of a struggle. You know, he's got these weird aggressive decks that have looked kind of weak, especially the Hunter, over the course of the last few weeks, but still just in a fantastic spot as Alutemu has to win with his Demon Hunter, of course, still, which is what Alan has got this soft target on.
I'm willing to say many a lesser player would not have won that game from Alan's position. Neither of us saw the ability to trigger the Varrock Death Rattle by buffing the Bone Chewer Brawler on Alutemu's side of the board, but the implications of that were huge. If Alutemu had managed to stick a Peasant, he could have drawn one card further, maybe gotten earlier second composting, maybe found the Teacher's Pet a bit earlier, and Alan, not in a lot of worlds, would not have been able to pull it back. Just very, very cleanly done, and all the micro decisions along the way, outside of maybe that one Libram of Wisdom you were talking about, I agreed with.
So going into the next game, Alutemu got the Warlock, Demon Hunter, and Druid still available. In terms of the trouble decks for him, I guess it is still the Demon Hunter that's going to be the worst one, but I'm looking at the actual just Face Hunter from Alan on the other side as a potential weak point. We've seen that against Druid, it really struggles to get ahead on board. Against Warlock, honestly, I'm just coming around to the idea that Warlock is in a good spot, especially with that double Altar of Fire in Alutemu's list. And then Demon Hunter versus Face Hunter. It's one of the most contested matchups for us this week. We tested it in our practice day. We've been talking about it a lot on broadcast. I'm still undecided on the matchup because I would hear the argument, honestly, at this point, for either class being favored.
I think it is razor thin, the margins. Very, very close. And I do agree that the Altar of Fire has become kind of a net benefit for the Warlock in the aggressive matchups in particular. But that by itself, I would say, is not enough to beat Hunter. They also need to hit at least 2 out of 4, in my opinion, of the healing cheap removal spells. So Touch of the Nathrism and Drain Soul. If they're not able to put together those cheap answers for the likes of Volpertingers and Intrepid Initiates against Hunter, they can still get run over. But Alan is first going to move on to the aggro druid of his own. Has, I would say, good matchups across the board, and then a mirror.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to be the mirror in our second game of the series. Such a close one, and obviously such a big decision point. If Alan can win this one, he only has to win one game with his Hunter, and as dire as Hunter has looked in certain series, doing it once is very much within its wheelhouse. And so in terms of the game plan that we're looking for in the aggro druid mirror, obviously there is the standard game plan you can go for at just a face value of play your biggest minion each curve. There's the pretty fancy stuff that you can go for with the Oracle of Alun nonsense, copying these big minions. What is game plan A in the druid mirror that our players should be mulliganing for?
Game plan A is go first, hopefully, and not drop. It is such a big deal to be the first one to get a threat on board, as with every aggro mirror, but even more so when it comes to Druid, where there's so few removal tools. It's really only the Park Panther that allows you to get something off the board without being on the board at first, at the beginning of the turn yourself. And so that means that if you are the first one to stick a minion, you have the initiative to dictate how the trades go. You are more likely to land efficient buffs on your minions, and you can take as many value trades as need be. There is a little bit of reactive capability with Guardian Og Merchant, and you can somewhat engineer awkward board states by using the taunts, but it's really all about being the first to hit the board in an impactful way.
And that's a very important distinction you added at the end, in an impactful way, because Alan here is going first. He has a 1-drop, if you want to look at it that way, with the Guardian Org Merchant. But look at Alutemu's hand. Coin Battle Guard plus Bone Chewer Brawler. Probably not the Watch Post, but even then, you could consider it.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you're able to gain so much tempo by coining the Razormane and another taunt, it's very realistic that you're going to be able to stick whatever minion comes behind those. And Alan, I completely agree that the Og Merchant is not ambitious enough. I would rather look for Squirrel or Peasant to have some immediate upside by being first here. But having not hit a 1-drop here and Alutemu having the best possible turn 1 with the coin double 2 drops, it already feels over for Alan.
It's going to be an uphill climb. He's got that wild card in the nature studies, which can, of course, maybe bail him out if he does fall behind. And, of course, just the play some minions game plan. If Alutemu peters out and loses value, then you can try and hope to get there that way. But like you say, this is a disastrous start for Alan, even with factoring in him going first, because he just wasn't the first player to get something on board. Missed the 1-drops.
Going for the Bone Chewer Brawler because there is nothing that he can really discover from the nature studies this early that would be good enough to pull him back. You can say Lunar Eclipse, but that only removes 1 minion, right? You're still going to be playing from behind. So I think he's holding out for the studies a little bit later. Alutemu has access to Og Merchant to buff his Bone Chewer Brawler and then have that take the trade. I think that's better than bumping and then shooting the Bone Chewer Brawler, right? You have 2 health on your guy instead of 1.
Exactly. If you're going to play the Og Merchant, it is just strictly better to go about it targeting your own minion. You could talk about maybe wanting to go hero power or even far watch post just to be more mana efficient, but I'm fully on board with this for Alutemu. Like, the mana will sort itself out later on. Just do the strongest individual thing you can each turn. Deny them that hero power, and this does exactly that. Honestly, I think Alan is going to be hovering that concede button already. I hope he doesn't, because I want to see how this one plays out. Maybe nature studies, as I said, can bail him out with a Thorn Growth Sentries. I was thinking more runic carvings for Rush to be able to trade in, but I guess that's something.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to live that long that runic carvings will be impactful enough. I think the Thorn Growth Sentries is above average. It at least lets him get a 2-3 on board, which is slightly awkward for Alutemu to deal with if he doesn't have any more buffs of his own. I think Alan's realistic route back into this is try and stay alive with these distracting minions here, then top deck Park Panther. That's one way that he can actually remove 2 minions at once and maybe get back the board control. But for Alutemu here, this is an opportunity to play the Alun and have that stick if he's confident, but it's not guaranteed once again because of Park Panther, right?
And so Park Panther is the big one here. If he can end with a 4 or I suppose 6-1 Divine Shield taunt on the Bone Chewer Brawler, that is what I would most like to do on this turn. I don't know if it messes up the rest of your trades so drastically that it becomes bad anyway. You could just leave a 4-attack taunt in play, which at least then kills the Park Panther. But you could go like hero power plus the I guess it is just pretty awkward. You can't quite get the Divine Shield to work out and there be a clear board.
Yeah, I'm not quite seeing it, but I think he can end with the 6-1 intact, which is still very awkward for Park Panther here. Or he's just not going to...
Yeah, okay.
There's so many different ways to go about this turn, and I was honestly looking at composting over the far watch post, but fair enough. Like, watch post is not dying very easily here. Even if Alan had the Park Panther, I think he would use the attack he would gain from it to kill the Razormane Battle Guard, and then Alutemu can just composting the next board. Here for Alan, the Arbor Up being expensified is kind of a disaster. He wanted to play that on curve just to have 2 minions hit the board at once, but right now the best he can do is Elune Marcel Cub. I hate it. I think it's Hero Power Pack Mule.
I mean, I'm honestly considering, it probably is, but I'm looking at like Pack Mule composting just to draw an extra card, because I'm thinking possible outs here for Alan, and I think it pretty much all comes down to going Oracle, Battle Guard, plus one of the 5-drop taunts as well. But even that becomes like an 8-mana play now, right? Or the Battle Guard wouldn't even work with the Elune because it would cost 3 anyway, so you have to kill off the Watch Post first anyway. It's all just slipping away, and Teacher's Pair off the top is a pretty sick way to close out the turn for Alutemu.
Right, and I don't think Alutemu even has to take these trades. Just chill. Yeah. He's sitting behind a taunt of his own. Park Panther's still ugly for Alan here, even if you were to get... Oh, disaster.
Oh, that's so bad. It doesn't copy with the Oracle of Alun. That was his out. If he got Greybow or Teacher's Pet next turn and they all cost natural mana cost, he's well back in this game, arguably winning. But he doesn't have it.
Which means the best play becomes... nothing. Is it just play the Battle Guard and composting? I don't know.
Yeah. Alun plus Marsul Cub doesn't win you the game. You're obviously trying to set up for Arbor up next turn to hit as many things as possible. And so I guess, yeah, double Marsul Cub. I don't know. Maybe something sticks.
Kind of a disaster. But such is the nature of the matchup for Alutemu. He can go Oracle double Neophyte here.
Sounds pretty good to me.
And now I think it's okay to say goodbye to his two drops. All he has to do is trade the Teacher's Pet into the Alun.
Yeah, composting is kind of tempting, obviously, on this turn, but you can only really draw one card before you have to kill off your Battle Master anyway. Because, you know, I would like to get a discount on a potential taunt that you can draw. But if you miss, it's just so much worse than going Oracle plus the Neophyte. So I think I agree with you.
I'd hear an argument for Oracle hero power. You don't actually need 2/3/2s at the moment to win the game, and the hero power would allow him to preserve his Battle Guard and have it take a VT over the Marsul Cub. But because there's no guarantee he's going to draw a taunt in the near future anyway, I think it's fine to sack the Battle Guard and just get maximum stats right now.
And I think also with the Neophyte, you can have a pretty good read that Arbor Up costs 6 in hand, given that 2 of the 3 cards have been more expensivified by the Far Watch Post. But he does go with the hero power instead in the end, which means that there's a reasonable enough play for Alan. He can finally do something, I suppose, on his turn with Arbor Up. But it does, of course, mean it's still going to be the Oracle of Alun sticking. Very possibly a strong 3-drop beast coming out as well, because as we've said time and again, they are very strong right now.
Weakest one is Ironbeak Owl, and it has to be that for Alan to have any semblance of getting back into the game. Oracle of Alun made more expensive.
Okay.
Okay. But that's an excellent top deck for Alutemu.
Yeah, you're just not even going with composting still, right? He's had like 5 turns where composting would have been a reasonable play, but he's just had something better every time. This Park Panther is nuts.
Just drawing cards is, or like putting insurance on your minions is nowhere near as important as just having minions on board in the first place, because Alan is not playing a deck that has access to AoE or very much removal at all. So as long as Alutemu keeps the board, he can very happily just play off the top of his deck and win that way, as he has been doing.
And he knows as long as this Far Watch Post sticks in play, the comeback mechanism that we always talk about, Oracle Battleguard 5-drop Taunt, is just not available. It's literally unplayable. It wouldn't work in terms of the combo. And so Alan has to make do with copying a Cult Neophyte and then conceding, copying... Oh, well, that wouldn't even work, right? Just Battleguard plus Neophyte and then conceding whatever you want to do. This is finally just absolutely over.
I mean, if we were to follow the logic of nerfs, right? If Oracle of Alun goes to 4, then it should also copy more expensive minions, you know?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, this one was over almost from the get-go. Respect to Alan for sticking out as long as he could, but after missing Park Panther on turn 4, I think the window closed to have a relevant enough board swing, whereas Alutemu every turn has been getting incremental advantages and the damage to go along with it, and a Greybow.
I mean, I'm probably just throwing that down first. I don't know. Like, you can hope to copy more minions with the Oracle of Alun first. It just does not matter. It's all game winning.
If he composts first, he wants to see what he draws off of the Ironbeak Owl or the Neophyte first. Sure, all a triviality. It's Pack Mule.
Of course it's Pack Mule.
If Alutemu's a real gentleman, he's just not going to play the other Pack Mule at all.
Alan,
doesn't need to.
Yeah, the even bigger gentleman just throws down the concede finally. It's one of those matchups. It was effectively over from day one. This is what playing your cards on curve Hearthstone looks like, people. Be happy that we have Rogue versus Demon Hunter every game, because that was just, over from the get-go. Alutemu simply got the better hand, which means the Druid ticks off the list for him as the Paladin is for Alan, and he gets to move over to the more conventional 2 decks in his lineup. Warlock and Demon Hunter, 2 relatively slow combo-ish decks, and then for Alan, it's the Aggro Druid and the Aggro Hunter. It's fast versus slow here for the final games of the series.
And I tend to agree that it was the Hunter, or it is going to be the Hunter, that's going to be most difficult for Alan here. I think that the Druid is favored in both these matchups, not by a lot, and you have to play in a very specific way as Druid, but the more we've seen these matchups of Druid versus OTK Demon Hunter and versus Handlock pan out, the more deliberate you can see the way that Alan has been playing, holding on to Oracle of Elune for bigger board refill capability. But he's going to move to the Face Hunter first, perhaps get a potential more difficult matchup out of the way. I'd say the more difficult of the 2 is the Demon Hunter, but then again, as we've tested that matchup, it is still very doable for Hunter. These are not like 60%ers by any means.
That's right, it's the vulnerability of both Demon Hunter and Warlock is that in order to get their heal, which is admittedly very powerful, there kind of needs to be minions on the other side of the board, because Warlock can of course heal from hand. They just go Tour Guide, Touch of the Nathrazim, Neophyte plus Drain Soul, whatever, to kill off their own minions and heal, as can Demon Hunter. They can go double Moarg plus a Talented Arcanist and Fellscream Blast to heal up to full, but that's expensive, and it means that you're destroying your combo, slowing down your win condition. So for the regular Face Hunter, it's about locking down that aggressive start, minions on curve at the start of the game, trying to squeak in some damage before a big Immolation spell damage turn comes down or a Soul Rend comes down to delete your board. And then a lot of the time, if your hand permits, you just stop playing minions. You don't want to play anything anymore because you go purely over to this burn plan. Rhino can be very impactful in both matchups still, because they often have to leave some amount of minions on board, and then pray that the burn plan is enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. Playing minions as Hunter towards the mid-game can actively be detrimental, or if you can leave it as 1 minion rather than 2 or 3 to play better around Fellscream Blast, or force Alutemu to have to Fellscream 3 of his own minions to get enough relevant healing, that can be the big win for Hunter, because if Alutemu does end up going for a big healing turn, it often involves leaving a Moarg or Talented Arcanist on board, and that means that Alan can then counter push with Rhinos. It is all about Hunter having diversity of ways to attack, though. If their hand is all minion pressure, none of the burn, it's all the Rhino stuff and none of the early curve, it can go wrong. But Alan has hit a decent balance here. Early minions, Mankrik, Trampling Rhino. We've not even talked about how important Mankrik's wife can be here. As a 3/7 minion, really tough for Demon Hunter to remove.
Very true. And I love the extra flair on the mulligan here that Alan gave us, because Volpating and Mankrik, that's pretty easy. You're coining that out on 2 and you're very happy with it. But the Orc Merchant being kept as well, I think, is absolutely spot on. It seems a little counterintuitive because it doesn't follow the curve of coin 1, coin 3 into hopefully 3. But giving Divine Shield to Mankrik is, again, so difficult for Demon Hunter to deal with. It denies I-Beam, Fellscream Blast, heal, Immolation, or it requires a little bit more to get through it then. It's very smart.
And it's very unlikely that Alutemu is able to remove a Mankrik that comes down this early, coined out. Like, he has to have I-Beam out, cast, and commit a hero power, something like that. And because of that, Alan's very confident he'll have a good target for the Guardian Orc Merchant. Alutemu, with the double jump, hits Spectral Sight, so he gets the quest completion. That's the best possible outcome here. If he had not hit that, it was not guaranteed that the Peddler would let him progress quest.
A reasonable outcome as well in 0 mana Fellscream Blast. It means that even though he probably wants to go for Glide next turn, he could potentially take a turn off if he draws himself Moarg or the Talented Arcanist as well to heal up a bit and remove some pressure.
And usually, I would tend to say you never want to outcast Glide in this matchup because they're the aggressor, they'll tend to have less than 4 cards in hand. There's some hands from Hunter that go a bit more mid-rangey, say they play Warsong Wrangler, and you can use the Glide to delete some buffs. This is not one of those games though. Alan very easily able to remove cards from the hand. I love that he positions the Divine Shield in the middle, makes the Fellscream Blast that little bit more awkward for Alutemu. And Alutemu does have access to a clear with the Immolation Aura.
He does, yeah. It's a little awkward, sorry, as to how you're supposed to go about it, though, right? Because you can go Fellscream Blast first, and then Immo Hero Power to try and heal up for a little bit. You could just go Immolation Pass and leave the 3/2 Mancrick on board, I guess is not absurd either. But then, how are we moving towards our win condition? If you're just going Immolation Pass, that's an incredibly weak turn. And so I almost wonder if you're supposed to go with Fellscream Blast Glide, maybe just Glide, and hope to draw your Fellscream Blasts back with a Moarg as well. It's a difficult balance to strike when there's so little mana and you have to clear the board but also do your quest progression.
And this is what Alan is looking to punish, right? If Alutemu has to use any of these resources inefficiently, use a Fellscream for only 2 healing when it could amount to like 18 if he waits a bit longer in the game, that could come back to bite Alutemu. So it's a really difficult turn. I favor using a Fellscream Blast here and then going Glide. But Alutemu starting with the trade first. It looks like he might leave the Mancrick. Okay. Reasonable. Having both Fellscream in hand makes it such that any Moarg or Talented Arcanist top deck could be more impactful later. But if he misses it, then the Mancrick sticking around is a very big deal. Not the greatest draw for Alan, though he doesn't necessarily want to overwrite his weapon.
Oh, it's really close. I think you just play it though, right? I know it hurts to overwrite the weapon, but your opponent is unlikely to give you 2 targets on board to trample into with the Rhino in the next few turns. And so, I don't know, Rinlings for pack tactics just to make it more awkward for them to attack into your Mancrick?
Maybe. I'm kind of leaning towards just hero power and damage. Not because I think the Rhino necessarily gets double targets like you said, but I don't want to waste the weapon damage either.
Sure. Yeah, I guess Rinlings...
It takes a long time to get the True Aim Crescent damage going, but it is 3 damage total that you might not recoup later in the game.
True. Yeah, and missing the hero power as well. It does stack up the amount of damage that you would be missing. And the secrets probably don't do that much anyway. Alutemu with guaranteed quest progression, even outside of Glide. So I do favor going for that when you have 2 Fellscream Blasts in hand. He needs Moarg. He needs Talented Arcanist, and this is the kind of hand that can potentially get him there, especially as Moarg and Sigil are both going to be discounted here, right? So he can play both of them potentially as well this turn to get another couple of draws off of the acrobatics.
He could, but I think this Moarg is much more valuable than that. Like, note that Alutemu could have killed the Mancrick here, right? With the 1 mana spare, he could have sent the weapon into the Mancrick, but I think he's deliberately leaving that up, so he will have at least 1 target for a Fellscream or I-Beam later, which, if it's just I-Beam, he really wants to have at least 1 Moarg going along with that. Such a difficult balance to strike, because if you don't end up hitting the I-Beam, you'll be very sad you left a minion up. But if he did kill the Mancrick, right, Alutemu would be down to 12 right now, and then kind of forced to target his own minions with the Fellscream Blast, which is not ideal either. Really tough to kind of discover which pan out you need, because Hunter can have many different hands, but for Alan now, that's gotta be a snap play. He can just go on the offensive here with burn spells.
I agree. I think he would be very hesitant to play... I don't think he'd play any minion apart from Barret Kodo in here, because again, as we said, you don't want to give them any extra targets for Fellscream Blast. 2 instead of 1 is a big difference, but Quick Shot, potentially Wife as well off the top, is a lot of damage, a difficult board to clear. But now those 3 minions are in play. Alutemu has the shot at spell damage to heal back up to essentially full. He needs to hit it right now, though.
Looking for Arcanist, you'd even take a Guild Trader, another Moarg. Doesn't hit it, but there is double jump to find more draw potentially. Alutemu is also running 1 copy of Philosophy, which he could hit, starting acrobatics, so... there's the Arcanist.
So that's
6 AoE with the swing, 18 healing, and a full clear. I guess only net 15 if you have to swing into the 3-7.
Obviously, he needs to be careful, though, because there's a weapon in hand, the True Aim Crescent, potentially Rhino in hand as well. I'm trying to think if there's any way you can not leave minions on board, but I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, you could then fell scream the rest of your board, but that's your combo blown up. Like, he doesn't have a good way of ending the game after that. So I think Alutemu just has to do this, and Alan was prepared for this outcome. You could argue that popping the or finding the Mancrick's wife in that situation is a negative unless you have the Rhino to push back against what Alutemu needs to do in order to gain enough health here. Alutemu, I still agree with him going for it here. I don't know if he had the strongest read on Rhino because there's like half the hand is barrack spells, but Alan is moving on to phase 2 of the game plan here. Can even potentially get Kolek for more damage with the Rhino.
Yep, Kolek or Retha both adding the same amount. Oh, he hits it, which means more damage coming through. This is just almost back to where Alutemu started. He also did slightly mismanage his mana on that turn using the 0 mana Fell Scream instead of the 1 mana Fell Scream. I do think was a slight misstep. But Sigil off the top, a fantastic draw, unlocking that I-Beam, getting Kurtrus online, healing back up, potentially looking at lethal next turn with only 9 cards left in deck once his turn starts. Il'gynoth, Arcanist, Moarg as well. All these combo pieces still yet to be discounted.
That Sigil was so perfect. This turn looked horrendous if he was not able to get the I-Beam. He would just take another 7 damage coming back the other way, which I don't think you can afford to do after you have seen Barrack hit the board. But Alan now has Neophyte at least. Not all hope is lost.
True.
He can disrupt a potential combo the next turn. There's also Rinlings to maybe hit Freezing Trap if you care about the Kurtrus body itself, which honestly is the least of Alan's concerns. I think he should be looking to set up just a counter lethal. So maybe it's like Neophyte, aimed shot, quick shot. I'm unsure.
Yeah, it's all about mana restrictions as well, isn't it?
There's the chance also to take Volpertinger from the Warsong Wrangler and just completely go on board and say, if you're going to combo me, you can't unless it's immediately a kill, which is hard to do with the Neophyte, and put Alutemu in having a big board clear. But he hasn't seen the second immolation yet, so it's all very complicated.
Going with the Rinlings, at least trying to bluff Freezing Trap, if not actually take it here. Gets it, snaps it up straight away, plays the Neophyte as well. He's floating a mana here with so many expensive cards in hand, but saying this is more important to stop the damage coming through. Talented Arcanist off the top for 0. Il'gynoth as well.
Whoa. Now, this is a matchup where you can sometimes get away with Tempo Il'gynoth. Not with that many burn spells in Alan's hand, but we could reach a point where if Alutemu has to break apart too many combo pieces that he wins on board. And that is a possibility, right? I mean, he could also just replay the Kurtrus and cheapen everything by another 2 mana in the deck.
It's bold, but I don't think I necessarily agree with that play. I think maybe the misstep here from Alutemu is that if he was leading up into Glide, which is something you would heavily consider, you'd much rather get Kurtrus into your post-Glide hand rather than potentially having to redraw it. But it looks like he's maybe not going for Glide, so not necessarily a mistake either.
My Immolation Aura, this 4/3 could also just hit the board.
That's true, yeah. I think I'd rather keep the trade possibilities, though, for next turn, just to try and snipe that Moarg.
True. It could also just be a target for your own healing spells. There's the Tinger. Well, Alan's seen double Immo now. What if he just takes the other Volpertinger from the Wrangler and plays it all?
It's not absurd. Oh, no, wait, he's already played one Volpertinger, right? He played it on turn 1, so that's the other one, unfortunately.
Okay. In that case, this Volpertinger is probably just getting Piercing Shot and Hero Power.
Probably, yeah. Whether you do that this turn or next turn is obviously the question. I guess Volpertinger Piercing Shot, Aimed Shot on this turn is as... Or even just Hero Power, because you have mana to go Aimed Shot, Quick Shot, Hero Power next turn.
So maybe it just isn't the Volpertinger this turn. It is just like aim shot, quick shot. So this way you don't leave any minions on board for Alutemu to target. You put him on having lethal or breaking apart his combo to heal enough.
One Moog is all he needs right now. He can go Il'gynoth, Guild Trader, Peddler, and then Glide if he wants to. But obviously he can't play the Talented Arcanist first, or you lose the spell damage by playing the Glide. There's Philosophy. It's the other half of the combo piece, but not the one that he needs.
How much damage is this right now? Like 5 and then 15. Only 20 by my count.
Right.
Another happy guildie.
Not enough, but he can stay alive. Oh! Lethal. Yeah.
Copy the Moog. That's it. He's got it. Oh. A close one for Alutemu. It felt like he might just get a bit short, maybe fall victim to some play paralysis, as we've seen Demon Hunter players be hit by before, but not so for Alutemu, the absolute undisputable king of Demon Hunter, getting the clutch win, and the Face Hunter now is struggling for Alan. Despite losing the first game, Alutemu up 2 games to 1. One final win needed to be in the finals.
And depending on how the next series go, it might be one final win to go to Worlds.
True.
Who knows, Derek? This one is so back and forth. The margins on this were razor thin. Alutemu, I think, navigated it very well overall, realizing when he needed to heal. If we kind of rewind many turns prior, the fact that he left the Mankrik alive was so important here, so he had enough targets to heal. It meant that Alan couldn't completely just desist from the board game plan, and that meant Alutemu had a little bit more time. Even though Alan had the big Rhino response, Alutemu found the turn to play Kurtrus and I-Beam. It came together perfectly, still close at the end there, and I think Alan did everything he could, but he's gonna have to do a little bit more because he has to win 2 games versus Alutemu's handlock now.
That's right, and Alutemu's handlock is no slouch in these aggro matchups. As we've been talking about here on APAC, over in the Americas, over in the European broadcast, I heard them talking about it yesterday as well. Altar of Fire, low-key just an anti-aggro card. Being able to delete your own deck, get down to Bristleback, Baron Scavenger, both for 1 mana or 6 healing off the Bloodshard Bristleback when your deck has 10 cards or less, is so clutch, especially against Hunter, because it's the 2 things they hate most. It's taunts and healing. It's Rexar's worst nightmare.
And so once again, as Hunter, it makes a lot of sense to just lay off the board game plan towards the mid game, maybe even like turn 4 onwards, unless of course that's the only thing your hand allows you to do. But if you have the option to just start chucking burn spells face, by that point it might just be better. And here is the Felmaw once again, the card that we have said over and over has been a liability in this matchup. Certainly can be good, but it has to go face. The most annoying thing about Felmaw is your opponent can time exactly when it wakes up to play a minion into that, a tour guide, a cult neophyte, make it for awkward trades. But if you can win the flip or the dice roll, then everything changes.
It does, especially when you have 2 of them. Warlock is going to struggle to have enough minions to put in the way of these Felmaws, as Alutemu is pretty clearly all in on the play minions plan, on the just tap every turn plan. He can play Bristleback, I suppose, next turn as his best play against the Felmaw. But even then, this is still looking like a good start for Alan.
Oh, but Alutemu's hand is great against Hunter minions, though he has all these small removal tools. He has a convenient way of killing a Felmaw, even if it goes face. And by playing the Bristleback on turn 3, he can kind of create this dichotomy where if the Felmaw goes face, then I get to lifesteal with my minion that lives. And if it does trade into the Bristleback, then I get to Mortal Coil the Felmaw and have a very easy clear that way. Alan, though, deviating from second Felmaw, I think is very clever. Just don't give Alutemu initiative as to how he wants to kind of give himself better odds for the Felmaw to trade.
Exactly. You're punishing both players here, right? If they play a minion like the Bristleback or maybe even a Neophyte, then you have other minions that can attack face. If they go for the removal plan, the Felmaw is 100% attacking face. Alutemu wins the 50-50 there, with that being undeniably the worst outcome for Alan, as now that 5-attack Felmaw is just dead to a coil.
And this whole board is looking very weak to Soul Rend. I mean, Alan can put Divine Shield on a Volpertinger and develop another Felmaw, but the Soul Rend is still quite powerful here. Not in hand for Alutemu, but he has something even better potentially with all of the small removal spells.
Yeah, I think it's just about, I guess, starting with the Mortal Coil, see what you get, but then very probably tap plus Touch of the Nathrazim. That maybe changes things now, actually, being able to play a Tour Guide. But again, it's about when do you play these minions? Are you doing it this turn to potentially raise dead it again into the Felmaw turn? Or are you just saving it for next turn? It's very close.
Doesn't go with Tour Guide here. I thought with that draw he might go Tour Guide, tap, and then Drain Soul. Like use the extra mana from Tour Guide to use your more expensive removal spell, but he's gonna hold off on it, really hoping to not see Warsong Wrangler here, and Alan does not have it, but he can track for Mankrik. Would you still take a Wrangler? It feels really slow next turn, but you have two Volpertingers and one has shield. One's gotta stick around the next turn, right?
It's not that slow next turn. Like you can go Wrangler plus the Volpertinger next turn, so it does fill out your 5 mana and potentially pull a lot of extra damage. I think it's worth missing the Mankrik on this turn.
Okay, maybe another reason why Alutemu didn't play the Tour Guide last turn is to have it on board into the Felmaw Wake Up. With the tap, he can play the Gold Shard Null as well. Quickly approaching the 10-card breakpoint. He has the Altar of Fire ready as well. One Volpertinger removed. Alutemu, I can't read that reaction.
It's pretty good. That is pretty good. I think you would rather it hit the Null, to be honest, but you're not complaining about that with the Drain Soul in hand.
Yeah, I think for Alan, that's the middle outcome as well. Warsong Wrangler here, again, can be played. Like you were talking about to both Wolfertinger, but man, does this make this board weak to Soul Rend if you assume you're just trading the Tinger. Maybe just ship it phase?
Well, you can go Warsong Wrangler for Volpertinger, don't play the second one, and then go trade the Volpertinger, as you said, and then Divine Shield your Felmaw at that point, just to protect yourself against purely Soul Rend.
I mean, in that case, do you even trade? Like,
maybe not,
you could send the shielded minion phase, create another shielded minion, and kind of force Alutemu to trade into a shield if he wants a good enough Soul Rend.
That makes sense.
There's also an option to trade 2 1/1s and then ping off the 5/3, but I'm not sure what that's better against, honestly. So, as Alan, everything's going face. Alutemu doesn't even have the Soul Rend.
He's got himself a reasonable enough turn, I suppose, with the Drain Soul just to stay alive. He can obviously raise dead a Tour Guide on this turn and a Bristleback, which is very relevant for when the Altar of Fire comes down. But it's all just a little slow. There's a lot of attack power on the board and 2 burst spells with the Aim Shot, Quick Shot. It's looking like Alutemu might just be 1 turn too late on getting down to those Bristlebacks activated.
Divine Shields are huge here. He could trade the Null to put that in the Raise Dead pool and play 2 Raise Deads so that you could have 1 mana Null times 2 potentially, but you are taking a lot of damage in that case. Maybe it progresses his quest as well. In the world where you, oh yeah, he's on 6 out of 8, okay. So let's say you trade the Null and Raise Dead 2, or you play 2 Raise Deads. 3, 5. You have 9 cards in hand, so 1 Null will cost 2, the other will cost 3. You can't also play the other Drain Soul, it's just too expensive, I think. It's gonna see what's in the tap. Tour Guide not amazing here. Can he even stay alive now? On board, yes, but Alan has Aim Shot, Quick Shot. He's shaking his head, he thinks there's a Soul Rend. But there isn't! Okay, he nods as soon as he sees that's not a trade you would make if there were Soul Rend.
That's right, he's just clearing off everything he can, trying to stay as healthy as possible. He's at 15, 10 damage on board. That is going to be lethal with the Aim Shot, the Quick Shot, however you want to do it. We are going to Game 5 here as Alan just has to win the Druid versus Warlock. Again, such a close match to lead into the finals.
Wouldn't have it any other way, Daruk. These 4 players we have playing today are some of the best APAC has ever had to offer and maybe ever will offer. It's the same top 4 as the final week of the regular season, and the winner of this next game we are sending through to the finals, potentially sending through to Worlds if Possessi wins his match versus Glory later on. But I'm getting ahead of myself, Derek. We still have this very complex matchup of the Aggro Druid versus Handlock, and one that Alan has already delivered quite a few master classes on how to play, just being very patient with Oracle of Loon, being very clever of how he plays around Soul Rend, where if you do create a board that's weak to Soul Rend, make sure to put composting on it so you can immediately refill after. And also, from the Handlock perspective, we've seen a lot of people just kind of leave up our watch post and say that is not a high enough priority threat because there's so many other minions I want to drain Soul.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it'll probably not be so much of a concern in this matchup because Alan is running only one of the far watch posts. But the point still stands absolutely. I think Alan has had a very mature approach to the matchup. He hasn't just been throwing cards down and praying that it's good enough. He's been very measured, saving everything for a refill in terms of all the important combo cards with the Oracle, the Battle Guard as well. And also I think one thing that Alan has shown really good understanding of is how to play with composting. We've seen him keep it a couple times in the starting hand, which is not something that I would initially have expected to see when you first take a look at this Druid deck. It feels like one of those cards that you just pray you top deck at the right time. But by keeping that in his starting hand, it means that even if there is one of those big Soul Rends, he always has the next wave of threats. And because of that, I think Alan gets himself in probably a favorable situation here. Not by much, still anybody's game, but I like the way Alan approaches this matchup.
Is on the play, which does already start to create some worry about whether you'll have enough resources, but there are cards like Peasant in the deck which are persistent threats. If Alutemu doesn't have a coil or a touch to deal with it, it can be very expensive to clear. For Alutemu though, I would probably keep Tour Guide and Drain Soul. Those seem like very good cards to play versus the Aggro Druid because Tour Guide lets you keep the quest rolling while presenting a not irrelevant minion. Like a 1-mana 1/1 can be annoying for Druid if they have, say, a Noyatron and they want to stick the shield on that. It challenges Peasant as well. And of course, the Drain Soul is removal at will for a high threat minion like the Battle Guard.
Yep, the Battle Guard, the Watch Post, the big ones. As Peasant off the top for Alan is the premium top deck. This is a nightmare for Warlock to try and fight back against, possibly even to the point where it prompts Tour Guide on 1 instead of the quest from Alutemu, which I absolutely love. It means that hero power very possibly has to come down to take out the Tour Guide, and if a taunt comes in the way to protect it instead, of course, you clean it up, then you go with the Tour Guide to take out the Peasant afterwards.
Yeah, completely agreed. Of course, Alutemu is never going to tap here. I think he's just kind of calculating how his next turns will pan out. If there is a 2-3, like you said, oh, is he going to coin quest and then tap? I don't think there's any reason to tap immediately. I'd rather save the coin for the flexibility.
I agree. There's like a chance that you get Soul Rend and you need to coin that out a turn earlier.
Maybe Neophyte is the one thing he's concerned about. That could punish not playing quest immediately, but that's only a 1-of in Alan's deck, so I'd prefer to hold on to that. The Cursed Mule has entered the ring once again. I do think it's probably just, I like the Anoyatron here, right? Because that one is durable to Drain Soul, and it protects the Peasant from the Tour Guide.
Yeah, it means that instead the Drain Soul or the Unstable Shadow Blast, whatever it may be, would have to be used on the Peasant itself, which is, while a very high value minion, it's low stats, and that's pretty big overkill for Alutemu. And so instead, it looks like it might be surviving the turn with at least tap coming down first, seeing what happens, and then in the end, I think probably Drain Soul the Peasant. It's a huge start for Alan with his 1-drop getting major value.
Yeah. Not just from the extra card it's drawn, but the fact that it's caused Alutemu to have to expend his coin and use a good removal spell on something that only had 1 health. So Alan on the backswing has the capability to create that 4-2 Bone Chewer Brawler with Divine Shield, which is once again a nightmare for Alutemu to deal with. Alutemu just deciding whether he wants to trade into the shield, which I don't really know if there was a reason to. I mean, it's not bad either way, I feel like. protects it from being hero powered down, but if Alan hero powers that, then you're kind of happy that's his turn.
Well, again, just pretty simple for Alan. Play your 2 best minions each turn and spend all your mana. Of course, Alutemu now forced to find an answer. Soul Rend, though, is the card to find. An absolutely monumental top deck. Kind of interesting to see him go Tour Guide tap instead of just tap Tour Guide, but he respects the peasants so much. He's using Unstable Shadow Blast to take it out. My goodness.
I think it's clever, right? Because on 4 mana, Alan can't yet play one of those minions that's out of range or is sticky into Soul Rend, the Teacher's Pet, and the Greybow. And so Alutemu was just saying, here, I want you to draw as few cards as possible, and then I'm going to Soul Rend your entire board after that and go from there. Of course, the downside of this play with Warlock is that you don't actually accumulate that many resources as you would like, and it's harder to play the Scavenger and the Knoll, but Alutemu can cross that bridge when he gets there. Right now for Alan, there is, once again, the possibility to put Shield on the Brawler, which I would list as my highest priority this turn.
I do agree, and I think we're probably not going for the Oracle of Elune here, at least based on Alan's previous play patterns, because you want to save that for the refill, and even though this is a 1-mana inefficient play, it by trading into the Tour Guide with the Annoyatron plays around Soul Rend. As you were pointing out, that is by far the most important thing, and so now Alutemu is in a situation where he's facing a lot of damage. But low-key, I kind of want to go Backfire plus Touch on the Divine Shield this turn.
Oh, I don't know if on the Divine Shield. I was looking at the Guardian Augmerchant because Arbor Up, a little bit scary here. Is he dead to Arbor Up? Yeah, I think he's exactly dead if he doesn't kill a minion here. Obviously, this doesn't make for the cleanest Soul Rend the next turn, but the hope is that by then he will have drawn Coil or the other Touch, something like that. Oh, Neophyte.
Again, a mana inefficient play if you don't want to go for the Oracle of Elune, which is tempting here. But imagine if you get hit with a Soul Rend after that, you are really light on resources, really light on refill as well. And even the Neophyte doesn't stop the Soul Rend from being a possibility. And so is it just Park Panther on this turn? It's a relatively difficult minion to kill once you've seen the Unstable Shadow Blast come down.
I still want a Neophyte, honestly, because that at least shuts down the Soul Rend from being a full clear, because it could be Soul Rend plus Mortal Coil, or Mortal Coil plus Soul Rend plus Second Touch to clear everything. And if you Neophyte, then you are at least preserving a 4-2 for the next turn.
Right.
You can also play Pack Mule, maybe. It doesn't set up a clean 2-turn lethal if there is a Soul Rend, though.
He's going in. The Oracle comes down. That is so clutch. One of the biggest refill possibilities for Alan used up. And of course, Alutemu has the easiest Soul Rend of his life to clean up almost all of this. However, Alan still has quite a lot of threatage still to come. Park Panther, Mule, Scavenger burned, Bristleback burned, Flesh Giant burned. Alutemu lost a lot of his big threats off of that Soul Rend.
He did, but he at least has one Scavenger still in the hand here. For anybody who is confused there, the Elune doesn't copy the battle cry from Neophyte, so of course you can still play the Soul Rend. Alan just played that to get even more threats on board to threaten lethal if there wasn't Soul Rend, and instead were some incremental removal spells. Alutemu does have, in fact, that. He can go for Scavenger, Drain Soul, Neophyte.
Yeah, I don't think this is a null turn, and that makes things a lot easier. Drain Soul to be able to get that down to cost 1. Scavenger plus Flesh Giant, such a strong turn, as Alan can of course push through the taunt with his Park Panther, but that Flesh Giant is going to start hitting him very, very hard.
Composting, that's a welcome draw, even though it's only going to draw him 2. It could, with this one draw, give him the other Guardian Augmerchant. Putting Divine Shield on the Teacher's Pet would be amazing. Even playing a Squirrel or nothing, though. Oh, man. It's starting to slip away from Alan.
Okay, so we need to be very careful here. What happens if one of the 3 taunts comes down?
Poisons?
Poison, sorry, yeah.
This happens, I guess. This is the conditional poison.
The one worst one. As long as Alan doesn't do a Possessi and remembers how the poison works, that giant is just deleted. If it was the Basilisk, Coil plus Goldshire Null, whatever, it's gone. If it was the Scorpid, obviously you just trade in and your giant's still alive. But now Alutemu is scared.
Yep, unfortunately, this is the one that gains poisonous while you have no other minions, and it has stealth additionally. So Alutemu can't protect from that. I mean, he can't protect his giant from that, and he can't protect from it going face currently because Alutemu doesn't have any more taunts. And that with an Arbor up is just a little bit of damage away from lethal. It's coming down to the Moccasin again. Is he just going to play the Battle Master? Okay, that is counter lethal.
What?
Oh!
That's a really big board.
But how does he play all of this? I mean, I don't think he can afford to play around second Soul Rend at this point. I just don't know where this Aug Merchant is going. Do you put it on a Brawler? Do you put it on your Snake and let that take a value trade into the Giant?
Is he leaving up the Giant? Okay. I guess you want to play around Wind Fury rushing Knolls?
True. That's a big deal. Okay, and then, so that means he's just hoping this next board sticks around, and it is very likely to. What he's gonna get here is the full 7 minions. All of these will copy, and I suppose he will put the Aug Merchant on a Brawler as well, so one of them will have Divine Shield. Outside of exactly second Soul Rend, this locks the game, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my god.
In the moonwell.
Again. Oh yeah, sorry. Divine Shield Snake doesn't work. Sorry, it loses poison. I
right,
either. Thanks, Soddle.
Oh, you can coil, you can tap, but it has to be the Soul Rend. And even then, he's just fatiguing. He hits it though. Okay. How do we play this now? You obviously have to trade first to clear the board completely, but then you delete your entire deck. You're taking fatigue. Obviously, Tamsin is still a long way off from being playable. Can he even survive if he Soul Rends?
Maybe.
I don't think he can.
I mean, he doesn't have to survive that long, right? He can push counter lethal. If you Soul Rend here, you already have a 3-2 on board. And in that world, Alan has to get a very poor top deck, granted. But you can play Null after that, and that will threaten a 2-turn lethal, I think.
That's not a good card. He needed healing. I don't know what's left in the deck because the Spectator's broken because of that bloody mule. But apart from that, I just don't think this is enough. He dies to fatigue.
Yeah, this is a disaster now because he cannot play a Neophyte after the Soul Rend as well. So I don't think the clock can quite get there versus Alan. Okay, we'll see what's left. He was looking for Bristleback.
Oh, Bristleback, Raised Dead, Touch, double Raised Dead. There were so many good cards.
And Alan did not break far from it. He got the best possible top deck quite likely here. The Arbor Up is going to seal the game. Alutemu, now that we see what were the last few cards remaining, I completely understand why he went for the tap. A lot of them gave him value and better reactivity. Tamsin was the worst one. And he cannot stay... Wait, he can stay alive. Oh, no. Sorry, the fatigue.
He's at 6. He takes 2. Hero power. Yeah, it's over. It was an incredible run for Alutemu. He had such a good win rate this season, finishing second. But Alan is the man of the hour right now. He knows what's up. He's been keeping track. There is nothing that Alutemu can do. We have our first finalist in Alan.
That's incredible. This entire series and culminating in a game like this where Alan actively chose to get rid of the Battle Master over the Giant just to give Alutemu less removal capability with the Goldshire Knoll. It was so cleanly done. I think he clearly recognized that even if Alutemu had the check card of Soul Rend, it was not checkmate. The checkmate is Alan fatiguing Alutemu here.
Heartbreaking for Alutemu, a man who's been pouring his heart and soul into Hearthstone over the past few months, streaming to a growing and growing audience week on week, playing some of the best Hearthstone that I have ever seen, in or out of Grandmasters, regardless of region, over the past few weeks. He's only gone from good to better. But if we want to talk about improvement, Alan still has just gone on the most meteoric rise, the biggest turnaround I've ever seen. As I've said so many times, 4 weeks of play, he won 2 series. Now in the last 4 weeks of play, week 5 to 7 and the playoffs, he's now 17-1. He's lost 1 series in a month of competitive play, and he's very possibly already got himself that spot in the World Championships, because it all comes down to Possessi versus Glory. Possessi is already our Season 1 winner, so if he wins, Alan is already going through to the World Championships. And if Glory wins, Alan just has to play the finals and win that. It is looking fantastic for AlanC86.
No matter what the pan out is, this is probably the most legendary run throughout the season we've seen, at least in terms of turning it around, right? Alan is the definition of winning when it matters. I don't want to get ahead of myself because he maybe still has to win 1 more season there, but it has just looked unstoppable for him. Yesterday I was saying, never put Alan down 0-2 because he will reverse sweep you. That's not even necessarily the only way he